powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet, take your profit, find out how. Go to PropSwap.com, download the PropSwap app today. By the way, Calvin Ridley just tweeted a minute ago that he bet $1,500 total. He doesn't have a gambling problem. Do you get involved with that? Do you put that out there if you're Calvin Ridley? Geoff Mosher's face is telling me the story right there. Calvin Ridley suspended for the year for betting on games. He responds, Moshe, with a Ridley bomb. He says, I only bet $1,500 total. I don't have a problem.
Oh, you know what? I interpret that differently. I thought he was I thought he was being very sarcastic and saying, I bet you $1,500 that I don't have a gambling problem. But,
no. The way that it's worded, it says, this is from Calvin Ridley. He says, I bet $1,500 total. I think he should have put like a comma
period.
There.
Yeah.
I don't have a gambling problem.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, as an NFL player, you're not allowed to bet, $1.50 total on NFL. So he does not have a gambling problem. If that's all he bet, he has a law and order problem.
Right. Nobody's suggesting that he had a gambling problem. It's that he bet on football. And this was something, Moshe, that we've all been kind of waiting for with these. The NFL's in bed with the DraftKings and the FanDuels and the BetMGMs and the Caesar Sportsbooks and the PointsBet and you name them all.
Mm-hmm.
They're taking their money. This was inevitable, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, inevitable. Yeah, probably. I should have probably done more research, and you may know this because you're a little bit more into the soccer scene than I, European soccer. But they've had gambling for a while. Well, I remember you had to connect, and when I would do the show with you, you were betting on some crazy, weird, like Chinese soccer league games and winning. So I just naturally assumed you were either a great bettor or had a great connect, or you knew something about international soccer.
Yeah. Well, no,
one of those things.
I don't know anything about soccer. There's a guy I know who's very good at soccer betting, not me, for the record.
So you
I can admit when there's something I don't have a good depth of knowledge on, soccer would be one of them.
Well, every once in a while, I think we would see some stories come out from overseas where you've been able to bet on soccer games for a while, and there would be kind of a controversy. I remember a goalie had one a couple of years ago. I didn't think it would be this quick, to be honest with you, but you're right. You opened it up, and, well, we don't know what he bet on or how he bet, but I guess we know he bet on NFL games. And
apparently it was through a parlays through his phone.
Oh, is that how he was doing it?
That was from Mike Garafolo, NFL Network.
Join the million others, Mr. Ridley. But yes,
well, that's the problem.
You can't do that.
That's the problem now. How easy it is to do it.
Right.
And that you got players now, and he had this whole thing last year where he didn't play. He had the mental health thing, and there was some gray area with him and the team. Not a good look for the league today, man.
No, and I feel like a tweet like that still kind of illustrates that maybe he's got some issues beyond this. Because this happened while he was already away from the team.
Yes.
On a personal leave.
Yeah, last year. So he didn't play at all. So he's sitting there on the sidelines watching games. I mean, is he putting bets on his phone, like live bets? I know what plays coming in here, a run.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I hope he gets better. He was a good player, and he stood to have a really, really good career after last year's breakout. And I hope on all fronts that he gets everything together and comes back to football.
Would he be a player that you think Roseman would have called about? There was a lot of talk about the Falcons looking to trade him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, that doesn't mean with the intent of definitely making a move, but if there's one thing about Howie Roseman is he's going to at least place the phone call just to see what the price tag is, what the availability is.
All right, on that front, let's talk a little bit about the combine. Because we would imagine that's a position the Eagles had their eye on at the combine. So, did they like what they saw? Was this a good week? Did they find out a little bit more about wide receiver down there?
Yeah, I don't know that they were blown away by anything that happened as far as the 40 times of the workouts. But this is a good group of wide receivers, starting with the Ohio State kids who perform well Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. And you've got Drake London, who a lot of people like because he's a big body. Same thing with Treylon Burks. A lot of people like a big body receiver who's got some speed to him as well. I think it's funny that Jahan Dotson is quote unquote underwhelmed by running a 4.43. That's the era we're living in. I mean, 8 years ago, that would have been perfectly fine. And if you watch Jahan Dotson tape, you know he has no issues. He's never been a burner. He knows how to get open and make contested catches. So I don't think, if he drops because of that, that's fine. Somebody's going to get a good wide receiver. But in general, it's a nice, I think this class of wide receivers, Mike, has a lot of diversity to it. There's some taller, big body guys. There's some shorter burners. There's some guys who kind of check off almost all the boxes. So I imagine you're going to see some guys go in the second and third rounds who will be able to make an impact as long as they, have their head on straight. Maybe able to some kind of impact as a rookie.
Well, and that's one of the conversations, is do they want to go with another young player at that position, or are they better off upgrading that position in free agency? So if you're looking at these wide receivers, you said you want to add another first-round guy. Now you have Smith, a second-year player, another first-round player. Like, is that the best way to go about it?
It all depends. I mean, I don't think that they're going to ignore the position. As we talked about on the Inside the Birds podcast that dropped this morning, they certainly have checked in on a lot of wide receivers in free agency, and they're doing diligence there. So obviously they're looking at the position as an area where they can upgrade either through one or the other, if not both. It doesn't, does it have to be the first round? No. And I would tend to think in it with a deeper draft like what you have here at that position. You'd probably address some positions. And then I like kind of the Steelers approach of just always drafting. You put 3 or 4 wide receivers on the field a lot. So, if you treat quarterback that important, you should probably treat wide receiver importance as far as just drafting one, if not every year, almost every year, and seeing what you can get out of it.
Yeah. Well, they've tried that. It hasn't been working. Right.
Yeah. Although, I mean, you could argue that I think Quez Watkins was a success. I mean, as a 6th round pick, he enters next year as no worse than your second or third receiver.
Well, a couple of years ago in that draft, Mosh, they tried to redo the whole wide receiver position because of the year they went to the playoffs in 2019 when they were using like Josh Perkins. The next year in the draft, they took JJ, Hightower, Watkins, and then traded for Marquise Goodwin. So they were obviously trying to get speed in that draft class.
Yeah, they're looking for. Actually, I think Hightower and Watkins were with Rager's draft class. So, but yes, the point is that they were throwing a lot of darts even after a first round pick, and if you hit on one like you did with Watkins there, who may not be a superstar, but he obviously can get out there and play, then you're happy about it. And that's what the Steelers do a lot. They take these, late round receivers, and every once in a while, more often than not for them, they'll hit and get a good player out of it.
Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds, the new podcast dropped this morning. This is the franchise tags are coming tomorrow, but players are getting released today. I guess we'll start keeping our eye because there's going to be more free agents that are about to hit. And one that just hit out there, I'm interested to get your take on, is Kyle Van Noy. He's a wide receiver. He kind of, I feel like, would be a fit for what the Eagles like.
The linebacker, Kyle Van Noy.
Yes, from New England.
Yeah, good player. It's funny that you brought his name up because on the next show that we do with Greg Cosell, the Intel with Greg Cosell, that'll be on Wednesday, we talked about pass rushers, and we also talked about how the Eagles have a new scheme. You saw it last year with Jonathan Gannon. They're not just a 4-down front anymore. They bring a linebacker down on the line of scrimmage on first and second down. His name last year was Jannard Avery. But on third down or pass rush downs, Jannard Avery comes off the field. And I asked Greg if there are a lot of linebackers who can play that position where they come on the line but then stay on the field because they can cover. They can become your first and second down linebacker on the line, but then move back to an off-the-ball position and cover and play, and do coverage on third down or rush the passer. And he said, yeah, that's kind of like a Kyle Van Noy type of player who's done it well, not extraordinarily, but just good enough to be able to be employed in the league for a long time now. And there's just not that many of those guys who do that. The ones that, the guys who do that are really, really special. So it's hard to find someone who has that kind of talent and ability and then was also really, really good. But this is the direction that the Eagles are going in. So when you talk about pass rusher, which is what they always put their investment in, it's also right now considered a linebacker spot, outside linebacker or on the ball linebacker. That, I believe, and Howie Roseman spoke about it during the combine, is an area that I'm fairly certain they're going to try to upgrade and bring in bodies at. And so I don't know if they're going to use a first round pick on one, but nonetheless, it could be free agency. It could be later in the draft. So, just keep that under your in your thinking, because it's a new way of looking at pass rusher for them.
Yeah. Well, I loved him coming out of college. He's 31 years old now. So you wonder if his best days are behind him. I mean, the Patriots release you. They usually know something there, right? It could have been a cap situation. He had 5 sacks last year, but really didn't have a great year. But he feels like the kind of player that the Eagles would say, you know what? We could probably get this guy, a veteran linebacker, on a cheap deal. Let's bring him into the room. Like, that just smells of, like the 1-year deals they handed out in 2017.
Yeah, no, I mean, certainly they will probably look to do that. It wouldn't surprise me if they also looked for someone who could check off most boxes and was young, who's on a second contract that they want to help build around, kind of like they did with Javon Hargrave 2 years ago. Yep. A name that comes to mind is Harold Landry, who just had 12.5 sacks with the Titans. He's kind of had an up and down first 3 years until last year, but he is that guy that plays on the line, right? And then now, is he going to drop into coverage and nickel? No, probably not, but you're not paying him to do that. So you want him to rush the passer. But again, he's rushing it as a stand-up kind of outside guy around the edge, which means your defensive end has to align next to him and doesn't get the space. Usually with the Eagles defensive ends, we've talked about wide 9. We've talked about space and speed and the ability to use angles. But now they have to look at defensive ends who can play knowing that a linebacker may come down and be next to him. That's a whole different style of rushing the passer that takes away the outside space that you're used to looking at.
Okay, this is like a 2-part question here, okay?
All right.
If Howie Roseman spends big money in free agency, like if he does sign one big name or one big contract, what position do you think that would be? And the second part of it will be based on your answer.
Pass rusher or maybe safety, because it's such a need right now, and there are some pretty good ones out there.
Okay.
Would you consider if I don't know what kind of money DJ Chark is going to get. I think it's very much up in the air right now, but it's possible you might consider that a big signing if the Eagles were to sign him. But I really do think, obviously, when it comes to big money in free agency, it usually goes to pass rushers,
right,
cornerbacks, things like that.
Now, the second part was J.C. Jackson is going to test the market here. Would they spend money on corner, and you're saying no?
Yeah, I can just tell you, being out at the combine, and we dropped a few names on the podcast today that we were that were solid that the Eagles are interested in. But more so, Adam and I came back from the combine kind of with a really good feel on the positions that they were examining. Mm-hmm. And I did not get a whole lot of corner back as far as, now it doesn't mean they're not going to sign one.
Yeah.
I just mean
well, maybe that's why they're not looking at the guys in the draft, because they want to spend money on one.
Well,
Jackson, and keep in mind, Jackson just became, they were going to tag him, I guess, was one of the thoughts, and then I guess they decided not to. So you were kind of waiting until today to find out whether he was going to be a free agent. And now all of a sudden you got one of the top players at the position available.
Yeah,
and he's only 26 years. He's only 26 years old.
Right. That to me is a position they're going to want to hit in the NFL draft pretty early, and if you do that, it's hard to get that guy on the field, right? If you've got J.C. Jackson and Darius Slay and Avonte Maddox taking up 3 spots. Now, you can't just assume you're going to get a corner.
I like that secondary.
Yeah, that sounds really good. But you can't just assume you're going to get a corner in the draft. But when you have 3 first-round picks and maneuverability, you could probably take some liberties and some ideas knowing that sometime in the first 60, you're probably going to get yourself a cornerback.
By the way, DJ Chark's Spot Track has him market value 4 years, $47 million. That's $11.9 million per.
Yeah, and that's good money, but that's not like record-setting money.
No.
So,
What about would you think they would be kicking the tires on Amari Cooper?
I would not think they'd be kicking. Well, listen, will they call? Maybe, but I would think that Amari Cooper is going to get a super offer from a team that has just as much, if not more, money to spend than the Eagles do.
That's kind of where I was Friday when that came up. I said, if they decided, hey, I'm only going to take a 11 to 12 million range, maybe, but I would imagine there's some team out there that's going to be throwing something at him.
Yeah, I'm maybe I'm in the minority in this, but I don't think Dallas is making the right move. I like Dalton Schultz a lot, and I like Michael Gallup, but I'm of the belief that you win with blue chip players, and I would probably try. I know Amari has been up and down, and is not coming off the best year, but to me, he is when he's at his best, he is an excellent wide receiver, and probably impacts the game more than Michael Gallup and Dalton Schultz would do for you. I feel like this is a deep tight end class too. So
yeah, it just he seemed to really hurt because you remember that year the Eagles traded for Golden Tate for a third, and they traded a first, and you're like, the Eagles only had to give up a third, and you guys have to get. He ended up having a pretty big impact for them.
Yeah. Yes, he did. And then there are games where, that game against the Eagles at the end of the year, the following year, they lost, and he basically checked out of the game. And so you definitely have to deal with that with Amari Cooper. It's a little bit erratic, and I think he hurt them going on the COVID list a couple of weeks there this past year. But the dude's a really, really good wide receiver. When he's locked in, he's tough.
Yeah. Football at 4, Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds, the new Inside the Birds podcast dropped, where they take a look at some free agency names and positions that could be on the Eagles' radar. And I asked you if they were to sign one big guy, but if they are looking at a couple of other areas in free agency, what could those be?
Well, if it's going to be a smaller splash, if you will, I know that Adam and I separately were able to kind of get onto the fact that the Eagles are looking into Juju Smith-Schuster. So, and that has the potential to be a small signing that pays off in a big way. This is a guy who had a 1,400-yard season and like 9 touchdowns. And then
it's a very Howie Roseman signing.
Exactly, because it would probably be a 1 or a 2 year signing. He only played 5 games, coming off a shoulder surgery. The interesting thing I heard was that with the Steelers, he played a lot of the slot, but apparently there's a lot of belief that he can win from the outside. So he did that a lot at USC. I mean, he is 210 pounds, so he's got body to him. He's not like a Devontae Smith skinny or Deshaun Jackson skinny. So he should be able to play that X position. And I imagine if the Eagles did reach an agreement with him and brought him in, they would give him a good look on the at X and kind of move Devontae around a little bit and maybe Quez in the slot.
Do you get the feeling that they feel they need another blue chip offensive line player? Like they lost Brandon Brooks, Kelsey's probably either one more or done. Do you feel that they have to get another top quality, or can they get through another year and not, yeah. You know what I'm saying?
No, I didn't come out of Indianapolis thinking that was really high on their list.
Look, mock drafts are mock drafts, but I keep seeing mock drafts give them offensive linemen, and I keep thinking to myself, they don't really, in my opinion, you have enough in-house option. You made it through the year without Brooks last year. You have enough in-house options that right. I have enough other holes that I feel like drafting an offensive lineman is almost a luxury.
Well, when you have 3 first-round picks, I can understand if analysts who have studied the Eagles, I usually knock the analysts who pick like a linebacker to the Eagles in the first round and say, "What have you not been watching this team for the last 20 years?" So I think it's actually kind of smart to do, because that is a position that if they have the ability
I'm not
to land a blue chip player, they would do it.
I understand why they're doing it. I'm asking you, though, do you feel that they think hey, we lost Brooks. We need another blue chip lineman, or we're going to lose Kelsey. We got to make sure we have a high-end player when he leaves. Or are they saying, you know what? We got Dickerson. He looks like a hit. We got Sayamala coming back. We like Driscoll. We like Anderson. And if one of those guys falter this year, we'll go after a lineman next year.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't feel like they went to Indianapolis looking for it or feel like they need it right now. But I also feel that the value they put on the position, which I think is a good trait of them, means that they would not turn one up if a line, let's say, they do make 3 first-round picks, right, or whatever. And that third one, they're there, and Tyler Linderbaum for them is a top 12 guy, but you're sitting at 20 and he's there, or 19 and he's there, and you think he's fallen.
Yeah.
And Jason Kelsey is, it could be on his last year, and that Dickerson plays well at left guard. Yeah, I mean, I would not be surprised at all if they took that kind of guy.
Gotcha. Well, we'll ask Trey Thomas tomorrow if he thinks they need an offensive lineman. He'll be jumping in for tomorrow's edition of Football at 4, and you can check out Trey's new show on the Inside the Birds platform. The Inside the Birds podcast dropped today with all the combine news. Jeff's back on Wednesday. So Trey Thomas tomorrow, Jeff on Wednesday. Andrew will certainly get all his thoughts on the combine on Thursday, and then Adam will put a bow on Friday's edition of Football at 4. And then next week, the start of NFL free agency is here, baby. That went fast.
Can't wait. It did go fast.
All right. Well, the NFL's got it set up, man. They got this thing perfectly laid out. They are good.
We didn't talk enough about Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson for the last 4 weeks. I'm just kidding.
Well, this Deshaun Watson stuff, did you see, Roseman conducted significant due diligence. He sent a private investigator to Houston to look into all his legal situation. So, I mean, it appears at one time they were really kicking the tires.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but we did a podcast, and I'm sure I talked about it with you on Football at 4. It was about a year ago, maybe a little less, where we had talked about how no decision would be made unless Jeffrey Lurie was comfortable with it, and he wasn't going to be comfortable unless he had all the right information. And I had mentioned that he had sent some people down to Houston to have it, like many teams, to have him looked at. So while I think the report is probably that you came out today is probably catching up to that. I don't know if he just recently did or not, but
no, this is saying that in the past he had done the due diligence by getting a private investigator.
We talked about that about a year ago on Inside the Birds, so we knew that they were up on that.
All right, well, check out the new Inside the Birds, and tomorrow Trey Thomas is here for Football at 4. Jeff's back on Wednesday. I'll talk to you then, man.
See you, Mike.
All right, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you